When I got divorced, I knew nothing about red pill, much less when I got married. In fact, my first encounter with red pill clarity came after I made my first video on marriage and divorce. And I really learned it from people in the comment section who were calling it all red pill. And I thought, there's something to this. And as it turned out, many of the lessons that I learned just naturally from the time that my marriage ended until the time I started making videos about it were giving me that natural red pill clarity. And I didn't know I was learning that at the time, but each of these lessons came from a woman and my evolution of thought. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is how red pill really saved my life. Because if not for that new understanding, I most certainly would have found myself in another relationship, very similar to the divorce I just left. And I think that's what happens to tons of guys. Otherwise, nobody would get married again. I keep looking at guys who are on their second, third, or fourth marriage, and I think, oh my God, you guys never learned. You didn't figure it out. So I feel blessed that I figured it out. And today, I want to talk a little bit about how I discovered red pill naturally. After my wife left, I definitely went into monk mode for a while, and I wandered around in these woods with my dogs, like some kind of lost soul searching for meaning in life. And but at the same time, the void that she left behind, I needed to fill it. At least I thought I did. And so I got on the dating apps. A few months, I didn't do it right away. A few months later, got on the dating apps. And the first girl I saw, we'll just say her name was Cindy, because it was, she was smoking hot. And so I approached her. I mean, very first girl on the very first app. It's like, what are the chances of that, right? Right. I mean, you just start telling yourself all this crap. You know, like, oh, this must be divine intervention. Here she is. This is the one that I should have been with the whole time. Like, you build this whole story up in your head before you even approach her, you know? So I sent her a little note, and a little while later she responded. And so we built up a little texting correspondence. And next thing you know, we're on the phone, talking. And she told me that I probably needed to wait a little bit longer. So it was. I did. I didn't go out with her right then. But I did go out with her 6 months later. Maybe it was a year later. But we did go out. And I could tell things were sort of moving along, but there was also some red flags that were popping up that I recognized. And this was the first time I ever really started recognizing red flags in women. And it was a whole new experience. She was extremely self-centered. And she talked shit about lots of other guys. And her past was checkered, to say the least. I mean, she had done some things that, yeah, I wouldn't have been so keen on. Like if my daughters told me they were doing that stuff, I'd be like, yeah, I don't think that's just a good idea. But she was still smoking hot. And there was still a big part of me that just wanted a little piece of that, you know? So I played along for a while. Then one day I found myself walking in the woods with the dogs, and she calls me on the phone, and I'm talking to her. And I am just finding that I cannot stand the sound of her voice. Like there's just something just scratching, like, you know, nails on a chalkboard as I'm listening to her. And I don't want to be a complete asshole at this moment. So I just said, you know, Cindy, I think it would probably be best if we were just friends. Like, I just don't think this is going where either one of us really want to go. And she seemed quite agreeable and amiable. And we had another little 15-minute conversation about how we can still hang out and do stuff. And that was wonderful. So we hung up. And then an hour or two later, I thought, I'm just going to send my new friend a text message just to make sure everything's okay. And I am blocked. Yeah, she blocked me. Just totally blocked me. Cut me out completely, right then and there. For what? I didn't do anything, like, you know? But that was the lesson. It's like, now I get it. Self-centered, crazy past life. It's all about her, super hot. Not getting any attention anymore. No need for me. She was feeding like a vampire off the attention that I was giving her, just sucking it out of me. And once that attention was gone, she had no need for me anymore. I was ancient history. So that was my first real understanding of the true nature of women, which of course is what Red Pill is all about. And with that understanding came a light bulb where I could start reflecting on my marriage and begin to understand it just a little bit more and understand my ex-wife just a little bit more and her behaviors and the way I acted at that time. So yeah, lesson number one was a good one. Women thrive on attention, and if you don't give it to them, they will cut you off, or they don't have any need for you any longer. You become less and less valuable to them. Especially, my mistake with her was I made it a terminal end to the romantic relationship. You know, if you leave the door open to the romantic relationship and just, you know, turn the volume down a little bit, you can probably maintain the relationship. But if you're gonna say, let's friend zone this thing, yeah, you might find yourself blocked too. So the next woman that I came across, which was, I think on the dating apps too, I'm pretty sure it was meant to be just a coffee date, because she was a lot younger than me. She was like 34, 35 years old. And I sort of knew in my heart of hearts that this was not going to work out. But, you know, you start thinking with the wrong head and you start going, well, maybe something's there. So we're about 15 minutes into our little coffee date when it becomes clear that she's got some kids and she's a single mom. I'm like, it's not really my thing. I'm not really wanting to take on anybody else's children at this time in my life. She seemed to have a nice personality and we had a lot in common, but that whole child thing really kind of stuck in my head. And so before the end of that coffee date was over, I had made it clear to her that I wasn't interested and that we should probably just go our separate ways. You know, it was friendly. There was nothing, you know, harsh about it. But when I got to my car, since she had my cell phone, she called me. She says, hey, like, it's still early in the evening. How about if we just run out and have a bite to eat, you know? We can have some dinner together, just as friends. I'm like, all right, you know, I wouldn't mind that. So there's a restaurant nearby that I've been wanting to go to. So she parks her car, and I think she gets into my car, and we drive over to that restaurant and have a nice meal, you know, friendly conversation, etc. And so I'm getting ready to drive her back to her car, and she says, hey, why don't you just drive me home? Which seemed really strange to me because her car was at the coffee shop. And I said, well, don't you need to get your car? She says, oh, it's not a big deal. I'll just get it tomorrow. I just don't feel like going back over there since it's on the other side of town. So I said, all right. So I drove her to her house, and we get there. And by this time, I've learned that she has these two girls, these two little babies from two different fathers. And that, that just made all the red flags going off in my head. And we get to her house, and she invites me in. Oof! The moment of truth. There I was, pretty young girl, lots of problems, lots of issues, just one big pile of issues. But maybe just for one night, maybe. I'm thinking now, what were those guys thinking who are the fathers of her children? Maybe they were right where I was years ago. They were sitting in the exact same seat. And they were thinking, no, just a quickie. You know, why not? Why not just do it? But no, the red flags got me. I learned. I was like, no, don't do it. Well, just let her go in the house. You don't follow. There's no reason for you to go in there. There's nothing that you want in that house. And so she got out of the car, and I've never spoken to her since. And again, that was one of my red pill moments where I realized that I needed to think long term. I needed to have a vision for my life. And if a woman didn't have the same kind of vision for her life that I had for mine, there was no point in me having a relationship with her at all. And the decisions that she had made in terms of having these children and being a single mom and all that stuff, these maybe have been unconscious decisions. Nevertheless, these were the decisions that she had made. And it was clear to me that her vision for her life, based on what she has to work with now, and the vision for my life were completely different. And no amount of sex was going to change that. I don't care how much fun it was. That fact would remain true. So this relationship would have been ill-fated under any circumstance, no matter what. So walking away, I felt really empowered in that moment. When I walked away from that, knowing that I could have gone in, knowing that I could have gotten laid, knowing that I could have had perhaps even a short-term sexual relationship with this young girl, and I walked away from it, I felt like I was getting power from that. No longer was I missing it. Now I was understanding that I was just saving myself tons and tons of heartache, and it felt good. My next red pill moment came when I met a federal agent, yes, a lawyer for the Justice Department. And she was very pretty for her age. She was like, I think she was almost 50, and she'd been married before. She had a really cool little house in a very fancy part of town, and it was worth, this was a few years ago, it was worth well more than $1 million. She was driving a very fancy BMW, she dressed like to the nines. I mean, she was definitely working it. And, her hair, nails, the whole bit. I mean, she was as refined and as sexy and as beautiful as a woman her age could make herself out to be. Nice body and good shape. I mean, she was just like your stereotypical, well-educated, well-heeled, financially secure, beautiful woman. That was the facade. That's what I'm looking at. We get to this restaurant. This is actually during the pandemic, so we're sitting outdoors, and we're having a glass of wine. We're eating hors d'oeuvres, and I am feeling this chemistry between us, this sexual chemistry that is really strong. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to figure it out because it's clouding my mind. I'm trying to figure out: is this me? Is this her? Or is this us? My brain is telling me I don't like her. Like, there's a lot of stuff about her I just don't like right off the bat. But my other brain is telling me there's something here. There's definitely powerful energy in this one. There is an enormous amount of sexual energy here. And I had not experienced that in a long time. Even with the other girls I had seen or dated, I had never felt anything quite like that. And so, there was, it was almost as if there was a battle going on between my brain up here and my brain down there, if you know what I mean. And the brain down there was winning this argument, So that night I went home with her. Now, we did not have sex, although it came excruciatingly close. Do you know what I mean? Excruciatingly close. Like, we were in it. And she said, no, I can't do this on the first date. And I was like, whew, like you can't pull that one on me at this stage. Like that's like the major tease. She says, oh, you got the blue balls. Don't worry. I'll take care of them next time. I'm like, Anyway. Yeah, so I didn't know what to make of that. Driving home from that house, I thought to myself, man, this is not a good idea. Like, the upper brain started kicking in, saying, that you just don't have the personality attraction. She's very pretty, but I could tell that her personality just wasn't in tune with mine. There was just lots and lots of stuff about her that I just was not in alignment with. And I just did not want her in my life, and I could tell from that moment. Anyway, I had gone to a certain point in that relationship, that night, where it did require a second date. So I was going to try to, kind of end it with her on the second date. But that didn't work out. We fooled around a bit, and I was not able to give her the bad news then. And plus then, I'm sort of in this agreeable state of mind, and I could see it. I could see myself doing it. I was just being agreeable to be agreeable because I was thinking that maybe, you know what I mean? Anyway, that relationship went on for about a month, and somewhere along the line, I had said, at some point you need to come out to my house, because I'd been out to her house all this time. So she was going to come out to my house. And I was going to pick up some food for my kids and for her, and we would all just have dinner together. And as I am imagining this dinner for the first time really clearly in my head, and imagining my daughters, who at the time were, like my oldest daughter was like around 21 or 22, and my youngest was probably 17, 18. Anyway, it came to my mind that I did not want my daughters to meet her. Like, I just knew in that moment I did not want to cross that boundary. And the first time it had really occurred to me that bringing a woman into my life and then introducing them to her might have some meaning that I'm not intending. So I decided to pull the plug on that date. Well, little did I realize that she understood that there was a lot of meaning associated with that potential date. And when I pulled the plug on it, she drew the conclusion that I wasn't that interested in her, which technically was true. Well, technically that was true, but I was not admitting that at that point. Like, I was trying to pretend that I was still interested in her the whole time because I didn't want to be an asshole. I think I was afraid of that, of just being an asshole. And I think a lot of men come across that fear of just being an asshole. And sometimes I think it's better just to be the asshole and just get it over with. But so I told her I thought we'll do something different, we'll make other plans. And she lost her shit. She started getting very angry with me. She started yelling at me on the phone, and I just hung up on her. And she calls right back. And I said, look, I'm not going to talk to you if you're going to yell at me. And she started talking again. And then same points. I said, no, let's just do something else. It's not about that. Let's just do something else. And she started getting angry with me again, and I hung up again. One more round, we had the same thing, except this time I said to her, if you shout at me again, I will not take your calls. And she did. She lost her shit. And I hung up on her, and then I blocked her. Yes, I blocked her. And I have not spoken to her since that moment, since that day. I took the food home, and my daughters and I had a good laugh about it while we ate, some junky fast food. But that one taught me that when your brain up here is screaming at you, this isn't right. It doesn't matter what the brain down here is feeling, because we were feeling some extraordinary sexual chemistry that I have only felt a few times in my life. And I don't know if it was the wine or the evening or what it was or the way she was dressed. There was something about that just triggered me, you know what I mean? Like in a visceral way. And it was extremely hard to walk away from that. So I would strongly recommend that in the event that you find yourself in a situation with a woman that you're extraordinarily attracted to physically, but in your heart you don't have it for her because she's just not the right one, you got to listen to your head. You got to just walk away. And if that's necessary for you to be the asshole, then just be the asshole and walk away. It'll save you God knows how many years of pain and anguish by just leaving. Now, I do look over my shoulder all the time because, like I said, she was a federal agent. So I imagine she could find me if she wanted to, and God only knows what damage she could do to my life. But anyway, that's a different story. All right, so the last one, we're just going to call her Lisa. So Lisa was like a college professor. That's the way I thought of her. She taught at the local college, and she had been married to a really well-to-do lawyer, and she'd gotten a super nice settlement out of that. She was making more money in her alimony than I was making working full-time. So yeah, she was doing pretty well. Lisa had the appearance of an extremely cool woman. Like the way she dressed, her clothes, her mannerisms. I mean, she just seemed very down to earth and very approachable, very attractive, but not like in a traditional way. Like she wasn't that super sexy, hot thing like the last girl. She had more of a kind of like a hippie vibe to her that was really attractive to me. Something strange about Lisa that I should have been a red flag right away, and I look back on it now, and this is a red flag that you guys should be watching out for, is I think it was on our first date, maybe our second. I think it was on the night of our first date when I dropped her off at home. She says, I really enjoy sex, or something to that effect. Now, I don't know why a woman would say to a man that she just has met those words. I really love sex. There's something like that. And of course, hearing those words, music to my ears, I was like, what a coincidence. So do I. But of course, every woman knows that. Every woman knows that. Sex is not about love or emotion or any of that stuff. Like when we were young, when we were kids, when we were teenagers, they say, oh, you know, boys, it's all about the physical, and for women and girls, it's all about the emotional. That is totally wrong. That is totally wrong. Men, much more emotional than women. With women, it's more like using the right tool for the job. You know, it's like sometimes you need, you know, a power drill or an electric screwdriver. Sometimes you need a saw. Sometimes you need a hammer or even a nail gun. So it depends on what tool she needs. She'll decide what version of sex she's going to pull out of the drawer and use on you. For her, at this moment, she just wanted date number 2. And so dropping that I love sex bomb on me on date number 1 was a way to make sure that I was coming back. So she had basically dropped the line and she was about to set the hook. You know what I mean? Like I was right there. Yeah, so I went home that night thinking, whoo, this is good. This is gonna be good. And for some reason, she liked drinking tequila straight. Now, I don't know if that's a red flag, but she drank a lot of tequila straight out of the bottle. No ice, no Coke, no nothing, no mix, nothing. Just out of the bottle, taking a shot. Like, whew. Now, I enjoy alcohol as much as the next guy, but taking tequila down straight like that, that's tough. I mean, she even had like a bottle in the bathroom so she could hit it on breaks. Anyway, so we had this nice little romance for a while, you know. It was pretty intense. There was a lot of loving and sexing and stuff like that. It was good. Except that as we became more familiar with each other, she began to reveal herself more and more and more. And she had told me this terrible story about how her husband was a narcissist. And I thought, I didn't know much about that. Like I was not into narcissism or any of that. I mean, I heard people call Trump a narcissist, so I knew that much about it. But I don't know anything, you know, really about it. So I just sat there intently listening because she was naked and we were in bed. So what else am I going to do except listen? And it was a pretty harrowing story. And I thought, okay, well, that's an interesting tell. Yeah, I don't know why she told me that, but very interesting. Anyway, a week or so later, we have our first little blow up. And she loses her shit. I mean, just gets very upset with me. And it was over something really, really minor. And I had a conversation with her afterwards and I said, look, my life is going along super well. I really enjoy the way my life goes. And the last thing I need is someone who is going to bring a lot of drama into it. So I can't have this drama in my life. So if you're going to behave like this, we cannot have a relationship. So I laid it down with her pretty early on. But it happened again and again, and we kept having that conversation. And then finally, I think it was the 3rd or 4th time that it happened, I just told her, you know, I can't be with her anymore. And of course, the same effect of her blowing up my phone and screaming and crying and threats, and I mean, so much energy that went into it that I knew in that moment that I had made the right decision because she was so angry and upset, and the things that she was saying were so vile and unexpected, you know, for someone like her. I mean, like I said, on the surface she seemed really cool and chill, and she had this whole hippie vibe going. But underneath, I think that she and her husband had a lot more in common than maybe she realized, because she would gaslight me every single time we would have a fight, or she would blow up at me and say nothing had happened. And I thought, and so I did a lot of personal reflection to figure out, why am I acting like this? Why am I thinking this is happening if that's not happening? I'd never really been so thoroughly gaslit in my life. And the experience of being gaslit is very disorienting because you're suddenly second guessing yourself. And every time she would blow up, and I would approach her about it and have a conversation, she would then tell me that I was overreacting, that it was something that didn't really happen. You know, she became more and more efficient and good at gaslighting. And until I finally realized on the last couple of fights that she was gaslighting me. That's when I realized that she's completely either distanced from reality, like she does not have a grip on reality, or she's flat out lying to me because she's unwilling to take responsibility for her behaviors. Either way, I knew that had to end. And when it was over, and I have not spoken to her. Although she's approached me on the channel, because I made a video about her last fall, I think, or last summer. And she created a YouTube ID for herself that said, "John, call me." And she wrote me a whole thing in the comments. I've deleted it, so don't look for it. And I blocked her from the channel. But nevertheless, yeah, she was pretty upset about the whole thing. But anyway, the lesson I learned on this one was don't jump in too fast with the sex. I think that that's probably the critical mistake I've always made in my life, and maybe a lot of you guys have too. So once that sex starts flowing, you know, you start becoming emotionally committed to her on some level, and she set the hook. You think that you're the one who's pursuing her, but really what's happened here is she has set a trap for you. So the fact that she told me early on in the relationship that she loved sex really did throw out the line. And then, you know, a couple days later, I'm chomping down on that worm hard, and I'm thinking, this is the best thing that ever happened. I'm having some great sex. Well, she's just thinking, oh, I've got you wrapped now. And so then she starts behaving in ways that I had not recognized before. And it seemed to only happen because we had had sex. Like, she had now like set the trap, and I was in it. And she knew that I enjoyed the sex with her, and we knew we had great sexual chemistry. It was a lot of fun. And we did lots of partying together, and we did lots of fun stuff. But her behaviors, like, she became more and more comfortable just being herself, I guess. And I should have known that before crossing that boundary, before getting in too deep with the physical part of the relationship, because I would have been more clear-headed, and I would have not accepted it from the very beginning. So the lesson that I learned there is that women like to use sex as a tool, as a trap to capture men, and that it is not something that's emotionally significant to them. So that's another one that I grabbed from my experience. So here's a quick summary of some of the lessons I learned. Cindy was really interested in the attention that I would give her. She was focused on herself, and having me as a follower or as someone who would give her attention gave her a sense of power and importance. And when I withdrew it, she was gone. She blocked me. The millennial, the single mom, she saw me as resources. Somebody who would pay the bills and be a dad. And maybe some of you guys like that game. I'm just not in it right now. You know, I am almost 60. I've been a dad. I don't want to do that again. It's a good job, but, you know, once is enough. And she was using her sex as a tool to entice me into that role, which I appreciate, but no thank you. The third one, the federal agent, she was trying to lock me into a long-term relationship, perhaps even a marriage. That sexual chemistry was real, but she knew it, and she knew she had me on the hook. She knew that she had me if she wanted me. And fortunately, when it came time to actually decide whether or not I could deal with her personality issues on the long term, I made the right decision, and I knew in my heart of hearts that I just couldn't do it, that she was the wrong person for me. And then finally, the college graduate, or the college professor, she was a narcissist. And she knew from the very beginning that she wanted a long-term relationship with me. And she set the line early with the sex. And she was hoping that my intoxication from all the sex, it was intoxicating, would numb me to the effects of her narcissist pathway or her behaviors. I don't know if she's actually clinically a narcissist, but she certainly had a lot of the behaviors of a narcissist. So I learned a great deal with those 4 primary relationships. When I started making videos about Red Pill, and I started talking about my ex-wife, oh, the lessons just came flooding in. Oh my goodness. But that's a whole nother video. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. If you have, please like and subscribe. If you know someone who might benefit from it, please share it with them. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.